together with us and taste the Lugana wines we prepared for you today. I am the Vice President. I was President for 6 years. The current President, Nicoletto, asked me to be present in his place, and I'm very happy to do that. It will be wonderful to hear Lugana from the voice of Filippo. So you have the floor, and I hope you enjoy this tasting session. Well, when we say to the point.
Welcome everyone as well to our friends in Miami. Apparently I have to go in Italian so that you have
Benvenuti ai nostri amici di Miami. Io parlerò in italiano e posso dedicarmi ai miei amici e colleghi italiani. So after saying hello to Miami, we are tasting Lugana wines here today. The objective of this tasting session is not so much to present a denomination as such, or only these 6 wineries. Rather, considering the situation of Lugana today, because it's a very old denomination, and in recent years, in my opinion, and not only in my opinion, but in the opinions of many, according to numbers, has changed its direction from being a wine, so just like many denominations that come from a beautiful place, also this one was the victim of its own beauty. What do I mean by that? Very many denominations, for example, San Gimignano with Vernaccia and others, have made a lot of wine for tourists. They come one day, they go see the lake, maybe they go take the boat, they take a souvenir and go back home. A lot of white wine with a lot of residue, with a lot of sugar, and it's a palate pleaser, so it's a wine that everybody would like. But that wasn't making happy people like us that love great wines, like Lugana is. My objective, and I hope I can achieve it, is to show you with this tasting session that Lugana is a great area, a great grape variety with Turbiana and with many different styles. How are we going to make this tasting session? Let's start from the landscape. Those who know me better, and I see a lot of friends here, know that I'm very convinced that landscape is mirrored in the glass and the other way around. If we do not find this, then there's something wrong. And if everyone, not only experts, but also normal people, do not see this, do not understand what we can find in the glass, it means there's something wrong in that. So let's start with geography and morphology, mesoclimatic, to try and understand what are the fundamental conditions in the area. We will talk about the grapes as well, some history, and then we will have the wines later. I've already been served them because I wanted to make a check. I'm slowing down, otherwise the translator will kill me. So, but we have some wines also going back in time. Therefore, I wanted to be careful, and there were a couple of bottles I needed to change, but we are going to talk about it later. So let's start from the fact that we are on a lake. We are on the largest Italian lake, Lake Garda, with this shape which reminds a sort of ice cream. The tip of the cone is in the north. The cone is coming down, and at the bottom we have the tastes. It's like an ice cream cone with 2 tastes, with 2 flavors. It's a lake that becomes bigger and bigger, and I had the fortune to visit it completely. I went to the new bicycle path, which is wonderful. It's right on top of the lake. I canoed it because I like canoeing and river canoeing, and I'm convinced that we wine lovers, we should get our hands dirty with hiking, walking, trekking, bicycles. Do you know that Garda Lake is the training field of the greatest sailors in the world? I'm not a tourist office, but this shows what is the situation of this lake. This lake is characterized by winds. In this lake, we can grow vines, we can grow olive trees, we can have beautiful lemon gardens, cedars and tangerines. Without a lake, this would not be possible. It's a sort of enchanted garden. There's a huge biodiversity. If you go to Montebaldo, there's one of the largest gardens in Europe in terms of biodiversity. Montebaldo is on the eastern side of the lake, of Garda Lake, and has a fundamental impact because it reaches 2,000 meters of altitude. And when you go with a boat and you start from north to south, and maybe you want to stop in a tiny harbor, you cannot make any forecasts because winds would change immediately. All of a sudden, though it's a lake, winds change. Winds come from the north and the east, and there sailors can train winds. Probably it's a gentler wind than the winds coming from the Montebaldo. From Montebaldo we have cold winds, and in summer they go through the vineyards because Lugana is at the bottom of the lake, and I'm going to explain this to you later. But winds are fundamental for the quality of wines, but especially of vineyards. Cold wines, especially in this time of the year and in this time of global warming, they reduce the incredible warmth or heat of the summer, and every day in Lugana there is a wind that is constantly blowing. And another important thing is what does a lake make? A lake gives back all the heat it has accrued in winter, so that your lands have always been known as a special place to live. So in mesoclimatic terms, and you can see it here in the slide behind me, can I stand up? So in mesoclimatic terms, maybe I'm falling down, but in mesoclimatic terms, you see Lugana is down there at the bottom. So those are morainic layers, morainic rocks. So what happens? Like all glaciers, this is 200,000 years old. Glaciers push and do this action, do like this. They push and they literally move the soil, the earth and the rocks towards the outside, as if they were a sort of excavator, pushing the soil and thus creating natural hills that form that natural amphitheater that you see around the lake, at the base of the lake. On both sides, you have totally different situations. On the eastern side, you have a Valtenesi with Groppello wine. It's incredible for rosé wines. On the other side, you have Baldolino with the grapes of Valpolicella, which is on the eastern side of the denomination. It is also protected by the pre-Alps, just like the lake, because Baldo, Mountain Baldo, is not an Alp, but it's a pre-Alp. For ordinary people, pre-Alps are mountains. Baldo is a mountain, but for them, mountain is the Alps. In geomorphological terms, Lugana is an extraordinary area within the Garda ecosystem, because what you see in that blue circle is mainly clay. the parameter of reference that we have in this terroir is clay. Clay and the specific grape, Turbiana. When you look at clays, and I've got some clays here, you see this gray soil, and unless you work it every day, you have tarmac. So your vine will suffer, will be strangled by this wine. And Luca knows it very well because he makes wine, but this is one of the key secrets of Turbiana and of Lugana. You read in many documents from the past, and in my opinion, this is a very, very summarizing definition. It's a sort of muddy elegance. So the mineral character of these soils is somehow, because minerality is really very popular, too much popular today, but those minerals are absorbed by Turbiana and are given back to the wine. Not all grapes are able to do this. What is Turbiana? Is those grapes you see there, that grape variety. For many years, when I began studying and working 21 years ago, people were talking about Trebbiano, that it was the same thing, that it was like Trebbiano in Soave. Some people talked about a relationship between Turbiana and Verdicchio. Now we know that there is no relationship. It's an independent grape. It's a non-aromatic grape variety. It's not very easy to grow with a very thick skin. If you go in the vine and you taste, and that is one of the things that I have been doing since my grandpa was making wine. So when you taste the grapes, you immediately understand everything. This is a non-aromatic grape, and as a consequence, in organoleptic terms, you don't have very many aromas in the wine, but you have a lot of sapidity and minerality. So, how long has Lugana been there for? The Romans, here they are. These are the Catullo's spas. If you've never been there, try and do it early morning at dawn. This is the largest Roman villa north of Rome. Legend says that it was the home of Catullo, but this is not certain. But we like to tell this story. Where can we find it? In Sirmione, on the tip, at the tip of Sirmione. The Garda Lake has a sort of finger with Sirmione. It was an island, but then it was connected by this bridge with a castle that it's like a movie because it's so beautiful. But Catullo talks about wine, and even today in this villa you find olive trees around it, vines, lemons, and since Catullo was a witty and poet, when he wrote something that made Caesar angry, he used the wine to apologize to Julius Caesar. So wine has been made there forever. And also the Benedictine monks began reclaiming the woods there, because Lugana means in ancient times woods. So those woods were cleaned and reclaimed in the 13th century, and then finally by the Republic of Venice in the 14th century. But actually the Benedictine monks that really had to do a lot with the culture of wine, because they were charged by Carl Magnus in the 8th century. He told them they should go everywhere in Europe, and especially monks coming from UK and Ireland. They like to drink. They like how to make. They knew how to make wine, so they went to Côte de Nuit, to Bez. They remained there for 20 years, and then they went to the other monasteries. So it's very likely that the first reclamations, because those monks were spreading the vines that they would find, we can start serving the wines. And the emperor asked the monks to propagate the vines they were finding in monasteries, and probably the first reclamations took place at that time. While we wait for the wines, let's go into detail. There are 5 municipalities in this denomination, 4 in Brescia and 1 in Verona. It's a denomination which is in between the 2 regions. Desenzano has 41% of the vines, Pozzolengo 28%, Peschiera close to Verona 12%, and then Lonato and Sirmione around 10%. So most of the vines in Lugana are in Desenzano, and they are also in Peschiera. There are various types of Lugana. We have a basic Lugana, but I hope you don't use it. Many people say this is our basic Lugana. This is the first thing that should be destroyed. There is no Lugana, basic Lugana. On the contrary, you only have basic Lugana, because I'm convinced that this grape variety shows its best in its purity. So 0 or very little oak. And its potential of aging is given by the relationship between Turbiana and its area, by the grape and its area. Another very fundamental thing. 90 or probably 95% of Lugana production is vintage Lugana. So that's why we are analyzing this type. I have some facts and figures here. Some people say, well, have you tasted the late harvest? Well, late harvest Lugana is 0.004% of the production. It's very good for producers to have this type of opportunity, but to be honest, we have almost 1% Lugana reserve, 24 months of aging in the cellar before they can be marketed, and 6 months in the bottle. Then we have Lugana Superiore, which is 0.2% of production, and it is 1 year from the vintage to be marketed. And then sparkling wine, which is 0.8%. Sparkling Lugana has been made for years and years. There's not much of it, but it's both methods, traditional method and Martinotti method. We've been served 2 wines at the moment. I'm looking at my notes. 200 members, 80 wineries, and 90 wine growers. So I got this right. One last thing. Lugana, traditionally, is made at the border of the lake. Those clays that you saw are exactly at the beginning of the lake. The more the morainic rocks were pushed by the glacier to create the hills, and today you can see it very clearly in this picture here in the middle. you have this gray line, this green line, which is the highway. And in the middle, we have the San Martino Tower. And I will ask Luca to tell a story about it, because in 1859 there was an incredible battle that changed the history of Italy. But Mr. Dunant, a Swiss entrepreneur, saw 30,000 deaths in this battle on both sides. And because of this terrible seeing, that's how Red Cross was established a few years later. And I think that Luca's winery is very close to this tower, which in geomorphological terms, this is not a hierarchy, but in geomorphological terms, what we mean that up to the tower you have mainly clays, morainic clays, which are very heavy, and this is the historic area. The further you go, the more hilly it becomes. You have more rocks and more sand, so less clay, and you go higher. We have samples from both denominations. Since all of them are without oak aging and similar vintages, let us see if we spot the differences. So let's start by tasting the wines, and later I will talk about the wineries. I'm not very happy to have a microphone here. But let's see. Because I taste the microphone and I speak in the glass. That's typical. So first wine. The first wine is 2020. This I can tell you. The first three wines are 2020 as a vintage. So we taste them together, these three wines, because, well, I have selected the 6 wines. I had the freedom to choose the wines that were resonating, that I could relate to. And because they're all 100% Turbiana. According to law, you can use 10% of non-aromatic grape varieties, which are accepted by the provinces. But in these cases, we have pure Turbiana. So, Turbiana is fresh. We have citrus and a touch of flowers and a fruity note, peach, nectarine, and wisteria, some almond blossom. When we are talking about flowers, we say flowery. Well, it's a little bit generic. In my opinion, those are flowers from trees which are not as intense as a rose. So it's limited in aromas. But the more you taste it, you find notes, underlying notes, which are not, I wouldn't say peaty, but I would say mineral in this wine. If you leave the glass there, you will see wines change. So for the moment, just the nose. You have 3 wines, I guess. So second wine. The nose is immediately different because of cream. So buttery and creamy, which makes you think that in the winemaking technique maybe there is a little bit of malolactic fermentation or some aging on its lees and skins. So, which is more buttery, and I didn't feel it in the first case. Going back, the main difference between the two wines is citrus. Let us go to wine number 3. Wine number 3, I find again lemons, a lemon peel. This third wine shows some resin like rosemary flowers. It's a lot more oriented towards balsamic. It's mountain flowers, unlike the first one that is more on grapefruit and lemon. Here we see something that is totally different, some gentian, for example. Let us taste the wines now. Now then, this is an extremely crisp, crunchy wine with fresh fruit. You see, it's juicy, acidity, very clean. It's an almost geometrical drawing of this fruit. The Lugana. This is an exemplary Lugana, vintage Lugana, which has immediately been marketed. This producer is the Zenato family. I have met Fabio Zenato from the Le Morette winery, 32 hectares in the area around San Benedetto Palazzo Sirmione, close to Peschiera, very close to the lake. And Fabio inherited the winery in the 1960s from his father. He loves studying grapes and vines. He got a degree, a university degree on Tourbiana, and he worked on genetics, and he has a tree nursery. So if you're interested in that, Fabio is the right person. Clays in Fabio's winery are really like tarmac. Of course, it is hand harvested, 300 and 500 plants per hectare, with very, very light. Fermentation on the lees and maturation on the lees. This is my now common practice. So what happens when we have maturation on the lees? Well, this gives the wines a mannoprotein, which gives length, duration when tasting. Wine number 2. So wine number 2. How different do you feel it from wine number 1? This is very interesting because we are moving from clays facing the lake towards a different area, a different soil. Well, I have not marked down the price, but I would say it's around 10 euros per bottle. And very many of these wines cost so little. Well, this morning I was having a tasting session with a wine Garganega 2015. And I was telling many colleagues we should really defend very many white Italian wines. People complain about Italian white wines, but in Italy, very many white wines have a lot of potential. They can age and they're very pleasant. Wines like Lugana are extremely food-friendly. So you open the bottle and you drink it with everything. You sit at the lake, you eat fish or spaghetti with clams or chicken or raw fish. And those wines are really food-friendly. And they're easy to drink because they're not so alcoholic. They are not too aromatic, because an aromatic wine, okay, fine, you drink a drop of it, but then you get tired of it. Those wines, you never get tired of them. Again, in this case, we have this creamy note, this buttery note. It's a wine with more volume than the first one. I must honestly say that I drank a little bit because it's so pleasant and I felt this creamy note and I wanted to understand the sugar. 134 meters above sea level, above lake level, so we are in the hills, we are moving, we are crossing the highway. We are in Desenzano after the San Martino Tower. So we move in a hilly area and sandy area. The result is this almost sweet volume that was not present in the other wine. I was reading that for 3 months the wine had some batonnage on the lees, but only in steel, no oak. Well, I said maybe some malolactic fermentation, but it's not malolactic fermentation. It's a heavy batonnage on the lees. 7 hectares, Abate Winery, established in 1920 in Tiracollo. We have Stefano, Marco, heading the winery, close to the San Martino Tower, but it's on the other side. So we are moving towards Lonato. So we are going west. So on this side. Let's continue with the third wine. Third wine, we have an issue with the third wine because the producer is here. But those who know me know that if I like it, I like it. If I don't like it, I don't like it. And if it's here because I like it. And I must confess that when I selected it, I did not know that this was the wine of the vice president, because otherwise I would not bring it to the table. Maybe more for you than for me. But I'm old enough to say that I like the wine, and I like the idea of bringing this version, which is more for meditation of Lugana. It's very interesting with rosemary, sage, some tertiary notes. When I was talking about muddy elegance, this is what I meant. In my opinion, here we do have it. We have, the smell you feel when you walk on a river, on the Garda Lake, in a canoe. You get this lake smell of wet soil, wet clay. Again, I drank a little bit of wine. I did not use the technical vase because those wines, as my friend Fernando Paldini says, these are simple wines which are not simple. So how much does your wine cost? 12 euros? Oh, come on, you want to become rich. So 12 euros, you just uncork it and drink it. But those are fine wines. If you don't understand it, you just drink it without thinking about it. But if you are a professional, you see visions, you really have a lot of pleasure in drinking it. In my opinion, this is Lugana at its best. And here we see a peaty mineral character, but you will find it more clearly in other wines. So a lot of clay, but since we have Luca here, I would like to give you the floor. Not so much about the wine, but about the significance of the San Martino Tower, because I think you're exactly there where Dunant had a look at that thing, which was terrible but also extraordinary. Well, I would like to support you, to support what you were saying. When you selected the wine, I wasn't supposed to be here. Today, I'm taking the place of the president. So I am a past president for more than 2 years now, and I wasn't supposed to be here. So the San Martino Tower is a landmark in the area. Very many people see it, they recognize it when they drive on the highway. Very many people ask if this is the local aqueduct. They have no idea. But this is a monument for King Vittorio Emanuele II, which was built by the French as a memory of what happened. And what happened? It was one of the most important battles of the history for the unification and creation of Italy, the 24th of June, 1859, a battle that was not planned. Vittorio Emanuele was allied with Napoleon III, and on the evening of the 23rd, they were coming back from the battles they had fought in these areas, and Francesco Giuseppe, the King of Austria, was escaping. On the night of the 23rd of June, he decided to stop and come back, but those two armies with 3 heads of state riding horses, 285,000 soldiers, they slept a few hundred meters from each other without knowing it. At the dawn of the 24th of June, the first soldiers began to move, and they immediately discovered the presence of the other army, and immediately clashes began. And this is the reason why, because this is one of the greatest bloodsheds in our history, because there was no time to plan any attack or any defense. So it was fought from early morning to the sunset, and there was an incredible storm that day, because those differences in temperature were there, and definitely they characterize the cultivation of our lands. But on that day, the storm put the battle to an end. At the time, soldiers had only one uniform made of felt, and the storm, you can imagine what could happen. A heavy storm stopped the battle, 30,000 people died, another 40,000 would die in the following 6 months. But the day after the battle, so on the 25th of June, Henri Dunant, the son of a Swiss businessman, he was trying to speak with Napoleon III to talk about the destination of use of some properties of the family in Northern Africa, was faced with this bloodshed, and he noticed some elements that made him think that we needed to do something about humans. So he wrote the Memoir de Soffrignot, a book which is at the base of the establishment of the International Red Cross, And the slogan is, "We're all brothers." If we have the idea of neutrality, it's because of that man. That man was not there for that reason, but he decided, he gave the idea that when a soldier is wounded, he is the brother of everyone, and that people should be saved according to the severity of wounds and not based on military rank, because physicians and doctors were only there to help officials. And seeing the farmers in our farms helping young soldiers that were out of their house doors the following morning, he had the idea of the Red Cross. So women giving their help without being physicians or doctors, without having a medical preparation, but giving help which was not simply medical help, but it was moral support. And I think this is a very important element, in my opinion. That was the first time that humans placed every race, every religion, every class, social class at the same level. And this is how it all started. So this is a piece of history of Italy, but it's also a piece of history of the world which happened there. And you are the father of a project to promote the story of Lugana. Well, I did not like that many people left at San Martino Tower without knowing that thing. So more than 20 years ago, we asked the International Red Cross at the headquarters of Geneva to give a name in memory of Henri Dunant. They said, you shouldn't ask us, but the Dunant Foundation. And at the Dunant Foundation, there was nobody. But awareness has been raised in recent years, following the risks and very many moments in the world where Red Cross was so important. Well, I made you talk, but I did not make you talk about your wine. But I'm asking you, you're not organic, but you have a sustainability certification, which is even higher in terms of commitment. Well, in my opinion, if we want to talk about sustainability in terms of market, I understand that people are looking for the organic certification because it certified a specific type of treating the vineyard. But if you're interested in sustainability, you can only have a holistic view of sustainability, which goes through the carbon footprint. But we shouldn't forget the chemical footprint and the carbon footprint, which is absolutely the heaviest environmental impact of the entire wine industry, which is especially in the weight of the bottles. Yours is 500 grams, and we shouldn't forget the water footprint and especially biodiversity. Well, the issue of biodiversity, well, first of all, thank you very much about your story. And there you have the Red Cross Hotel. It's a hyper-modern hotel with a lot of contemporary art. So no herbicidal, well, for 20 years now. And in this respect, I must say that there's a lot of attention everywhere in Garda, and this is beautiful. But let us now continue. Wine number 4. Now we have 2018, so we're going back in time. Look at the color. The color is beautiful, bright, transparent. This is a company in Pozzolengo, between Peschiera and Sirmione. 40-year-old vines. It's not a single vineyard, but it's a selection. Marangona. Here we have Alessandro, very much focused on Lugana. And Alessandro is very much interested in old wines and in using cement. He has also a bottle which makes only cement. I found it too excessive, but at the moment here we have marangona, means bell in local language. In this case, there is nothing. 10, 12 months in still, without glass, maturing on the lees. The result is a wine which, from the very first tasting, it's wonderful because it combines freshness, it's clean, it's fruity, it's got some tertiary elements which should not be taken for granted. This is not oxidation, but it's the entire very elegant hydrocarbon, green tea, autumn leaves, dried flowers, and all the perfume of Turbiana, which is this peach and these small whispered flowers. We never have excessive flowers. Well, I could spend the entire day just analyzing the nose. I think the perfume is extraordinary. I have tasted some old vintages and even bottles with cork and stelving. This is a stelving, but it's incredible how it preserves the tension of the wine. I'm talking too much, so I'm drinking a little bit. I'm making a few master classes, so I must be careful. So, but just a little sip. And the wine has these catechins, this hardness of the skins of Turbiana. You feel it, in this case, together with the salty note, which comes last with almond blossom and some bitter almond at the end. But it is offset by the juice with natural sweetness. And there's a lot of material here. You have something here. Sometimes when you have some tea, a few drops from a tea bag, a very, very fine tonguing, very elegant, which I find really appropriate in a non-aromatic grape-like variety like this one, because it gives structure, strength, and length. This is an organic company, another wine which is sold for €12.90. For this reason, I tell a lot of my American friends, well, we have Miami, my friends, buy this wine, get to a bottle, drink it now, and put 6 away, and forget about it. Just buy a case, drink 6 wines, 6 bottles, and leave 6 bottles away. Well, I made tasting sessions with very famous wines, €350, €3,500, and sometimes you drink those wines and you say, well, I'm talking about international wines, but I'm talking about the market now. So wine number 4, wine number 5, I apologize, number 5. Cedar. This is pure cedar. I do not know our friends in Miami, I do not know. But in Milan, do you remember cedar soda? We had it in Milan. And this is like cedar peel or candied cedar, candied ginger. It's got some Well, I was very focused and careful. I tasted some bottles, a couple of them were not wonderful, and I had them replaced. And here I have a mineral note, a smoky note, like gunflint, like Merceau. You know, it's a small area, and they know how to make wines. Some apricot and Nespola. Yes, I'm translating it. I don't remember how you say it. So it's cedar. It's the balsamic part of the wine. Tea tree oil. Medlar and gentian, anise seed, licorice. That's incredible. You can spend 45 minutes here. But it's a very, very complex nose. Well, it's crazy. It's got a creamy, it's creamy but dense on your palate. Well, if the color is amber, it's no good. Sometimes it happens with old wines. This was not made to age. These wines were not made to age, thinking that you would drink them after 5, 6, 7 years. So this is 2013 with a little bit of malolactic fermentation, 6 months in oak, 2013. And again, I am very much surprised by the elegance of this wine, a very beautiful saffron note. It's, you can enjoy this wine with everything, with some cheese, with some risotto, why not? Maybe Milanese risotto, because it's got a lot of acidity. I think we're around 6 grams per liter. So it's a reactive wine, it's not a passive wine. Some phenolic notes, almonds. I like it very much because it's in Lugana, in Turbiana. We must feel the flower or the almond or marzipan. Last wine, well, the color of the last wine shows its age. We see at the nose, because when I tasted it before, it was not showing its age. We're going back with this Lugana 2005 vintage. Well, something happened since the opening. Those are delicate wines. We've got laurel or bay leaf. Before you take it from the plant, it's like walking along a bush or a shrub of laurel. So if you move the glass, well, they wrote reserve, but technically this cannot be a reserve, because reserve, according to the technical specification and according to law, was established in 2018, but it was their reserve wine. This is a particular wine between Sermion and Desenzano, very few miles from the lake, and they work, this is Caloiera, Riserva del Lupo, they always work with something very strange. It's double harvest. They harvest in September, October, then they wait, late harvest until November, but they never put the wine in oak. So this is an idea that I pushed a little bit. I also tasted it from 1999, and I must say that We have some mushrooms, oxidation, like autumn leaves. But together with it, we have chestnut honey, mango, so more tropical, more exotic notes in the wine, but with a trace of Turbiana, with that gunflint mineral. It's changing a lot. It's like having popcorns with burnt caramel on top, chamomile flowers. Of course, the wine has aged. Can you feel it on the palate? This is a wine with a lot of material, acidity, creaminess. And I must say that this winery, well, they make a reserve wine without calling it a reserve. We've brought 2005. At the moment, they're selling 2017. Ambra and her husband are very sweet people, very reserved, and they told me, but are you sure you want to bring such an old wine? So they wanted me to bring the young wine, but in my opinion it was worth it. It was worth feeling the aging potential. I had some 99 bottles, one was good and two were not good, so I didn't feel like serving it. Grapes are harvested and pressed, part of it by gravity. It's a very craft process, artisanal process, and sometimes they wait until November to have the third harvest for this wine. What can we say? You may have understood that I've fallen in love with Garda Lake. I like this extraordinary cradle for food and wine. And I believe it's a moment of change for Lugana. In 1984, it was 400 hectares, and now it's 2,500 hectares. A lot of investments made by important wineries or companies. Marzotto and the Santa Margherita Group purchased Camaiol. This is Vigneto Molin. Other producers are investing in the area, and I hope the trend is to use Turbiana as much as possible, not using ancillary grapes, not aromatic grapes. So first of all, thank you very much for listening to us. I saw that you were following me with your eyes. I would like to thank the Vice President for his contribution. And now I would like to leave the floor to you. What did you like? What did you not like? Or any remarks? Some of you may know Lugana better than I do, and our friends from Miami. Also, if there's anything they would like to say about their experience with Lugana, who would like to start? Can we give some feedback to the consortium and to myself about these wines? What do you think of it? Anybody need a microphone? Who wants to break the ice? So we have a question from Miami. I can read it in English.
We read about a high-speed train that will be built in the area that would affect the wineries. Is there any news on this? Are any of these wineries going to be affected?
Oh my gosh, like Miami seems to be more tuned in than we are.
Miami sembra essere più consapevole di noi. So, what about this high-speed train?
Thank you very much for asking about that, because
Prima di tutto,
it's an issue that we've been facing.
grazie mille, perché è una questione che stiamo affrontando in modo molto attento. But I will continue in Italian so that everybody can understand me. The high-speed train is crosses our area despite years of battles, and we tried to convince government to find alternative solutions. The alternative solution would be to cross the corridor between the south of the lake and the San Martino Tower using the current line, because we already have high-speed trains are already going between Verona and Brescia, and they are using the current tracks. So we made some studies, some scientific surveys showing that they could use those 10 kilometers on the existing tracks for the new high-speed train. We did not manage, but we managed so that no building site would be in the Lugana area. So the impact is around 30 hectares total. And out of 2,400 hectares, this is something we can sustain, versus more than 150 hectares that would have been affected or damaged, because they would have been used as building sites. They would have used them for more than 10 years, and thanks to our battles we've managed to achieve this. But thank you very much for this question, because it's a campaign that we used because we wanted to raise awareness in the connection between the beauty of a place and the quality of the wine that is grown in that place, because those things go hand in hand, and I'm pretty much convinced of that. Any questions from Milan? The interpreter apologizes, but I cannot hear the question because the gentleman is not using the microphone. Well, yes, he's answering. Well, I would like to build on what you said, because I really appreciated the selection of wines made by Filippo exactly for this reason. He tried to select wines that had been made so that they could be drunk when they are marketed. According to the Lugana specifications, these wines can be marketed after the 15th of January, which is very early after the vintage and the harvest. But some of us market them later, even 1 year after the vintage. And I understand that Garda Lake is like a small Mediterranean sea, and it's very particular because it's got the Alps. It's like a bridge between the climate of the Alps and the plains that are connected to the Alps. Thank you very much, Alberto. We have another question? While I wait for the question, there's one thing I wanted to say about the stilts or piles they found in Garda Lake, showing seeds of the vines, showing that.
With the soils, how do they get the seashell characteristics?
Scusa, made with no Stillness, hai detto?
Stainless.
Okay. Well, that's a good point. It's exactly terroir.
Beh, un'ottima domanda, è esattamente il terroir.
Lugana, the thing about Turbiana,
La cosa del Lugana e del Turbiano.
Allora, esattamente quello è il punto.
Yeah,
cioè,
that's exactly the point. Lugana,
la Turbiana,
Turbiana,
nella denominazione Lugana,
in the Lugana denomination,
esattamente questi
gives
profumi
exactly
di
these
carattere minerale.
aromas, which are mineral aromas.
Cioè, proprio quasi, io stento a dirlo perché se dico
I
sea breeze,
would rather,
diceva, cioè,
I would not talk about sea breeze because there's a lake,
però è vero,
but
perché
it's
sono
true.
dimostrano
Those are wines
diciamo, di
with this
salinità e di mineralità
very salty and mineral character, which is only and exclusively due to the intimate marriage between Turbiana and those clays, morainic clays. And if I may add one thing, a very, very important element is also the fact that until now, more than 50% of Turbiana is still in the vines, has not been harvested yet. Well, this thing about Caloiera, for example, they harvest until November. Ambra told me we harvest after All Saints. So it's never yielding. Those grapes have a very long maturation curve. 4 weeks have gone since we harvested Turbiana for the sparkling wines, and it will take another 2 weeks before 80-90% of Turbiana is harvested. And this helps these vines to extract from the soil the sapidity, the nervousness, the agility that gives it the opportunity to age. Well, this element of the catechins on the skins is a specific feature of Turbiana. Why were you raising your hand? We have another question from Miami. Yes.
Representative, what local ingredients are native to the land and what pairs well with them?
Allora, il pesce di lago
Well,
classicone, direi, cioè,
freshwater fish is typical.
per forza il pesce di lago.
Well, you must eat freshwater fish. There are very many places where they make good fish because freshwater fish is not easy at all. But what I said in the beginning, I would like to repeat it to our food colleague, is the following. This wine is neutral in aromatic terms, so it goes very well with raw fish, with pasta, because it has enough acidity to be paired with fatty dishes, with chicken,
qualche cosa, una carne bianca anche più importante, con il quale il vino riesce sicuramente ad avere un dialogo, perché
or with fowl or guinea fowl, because there's some thickness, some tannins, so it can pair well with important dishes as well. So no questions from Milan?
Allora, diciamo, detta velocemente perché mi stavo dicendo che dobbiamo wrap it up.
So very quickly, because we need to wrap it up, clays closer to the lake, you have a lot of wind, you have a lot of clay, the soil is heavier, so Lugana tends to be more mineral. The further you go, the soil becomes harder, rockier, sandier, generally speaking, giving more acidity and volume. Luca, was it right or not? Yes, I agree. I must say that what you would see in the past when there was no grass in the vineyards. In the past, when you would go on the San Martino Tower in winter, you would see spots in Lugana, because actually this mix is not uniform and cannot be clearly identified in terms of elevation. There are some hills with different colors according to their positions, and that's very interesting. We can generally say that closer to the lake is 65 meters above sea level, and the highest hills are 130 meters, so 65, 70 meters, which are very important because they face the winds. Thanks to this slope, which is very useful because it gives the opportunity to water to flow, because clay is waterproof. So, but on top of the hills we have a lot of rocks, because that's where the soil was pushed, and the lowest parts, the lower parts, the parts that were reclaimed since the Middle Ages, are really mixed. If you dig wells in various areas, you don't see homogeneous layers. 500 meters away, it is totally different. The rhythm between clay, sand, clay, rock. So it's very hard to give a single answer. We must also take into account that many wineries have vineyards in various areas. So we must leave now. Thank you very much. Thank you.